All right, we're glad to have you back. Many speakers have said that for Nigeria to end corruption, the fight must begin with individuals. They believe that when Nigerians change their behavior, attitude and conduct, Nigeria stands a chance to stamp out this evil.
Now, joining us now to discuss this is the Secretary General, Ijo Youth Council, Alfred Kemepado. He's here with us in the studio. Alfred, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right. When it comes to the issue of corruption, it seems like every Nigerian knows what the problem is. Everybody. If you ask every Nigerian on the street, what is the... He has his own analysis. In fact, sometimes he gives you this statistics out of the head, as in 24% of Nigerians are not this, or 75% of Nigerians are that, you know, and all of that. Whether they are founded or not, the statistics are founded or data are founded or not is something else. But everyone knows the issues. The leaders, the followers know the problems of this country, but no one seems to be taking the steps to handle them.
Yeah, I think that's basically because the approach is wrong, or the approach is not working. Several administrations have come with different approaches with their own success stories without making significant progress, including this one. So I think we need to begin to look for local solutions to the local problems.
What would those local solutions be? I mean, you think corruption is corruption in the United States, it's corruption in Asia, it's corruption in Africa. Or do we have homegrown corruption that would need a homegrown solution to?
No, we have, you know, every region has its peculiarities. And in fighting corruption anywhere in the world, you have to be innovative, you have to be creative. You don't just have to be adaptive because the cultures are different. Like you said in your intro, you talked about corruption being an attitudinal something good, and that's rightly so. So, but when you look at the old situation in Nigeria, the fight against corruption from administration to administration, it's more or less something like a witch hunt of people, including this one.
If I read you correctly, are you saying that corruption means different things to different people?
Not to different people. Like what I'm saying is the approach by different administrations are coming in different form, but it is not making significant progress. By this I mean specifically, look at this administration, for instance. Yes, we can give the highest selling point for the president while he was campaigning was his fight against anti-corruption, but yet in his administration...
No, his fight against corruption.
His fight against... No, what his stand...
Not against anti-corruption,
okay,
otherwise
his stand against corruption.
Yeah.
But yet in this administration, we have seen pockets of corruption within the top brass of his administration. Yeah. We have also noticed, and the sentiments are real, people who have been witch-hunted for corruption, moving from party A, other parties to his party, and they are being shielded. So when you look at the whole of this mix, it's not making real progress. You see, let me say this categorically. I think we don't have to fight corruption in this country yielding to imperialistic ideas. By that I mean, let me give you a practical example. When, after the bitter war, the apartheid struggle in South Africa, when Nelson Mandela came as president, one of the first things he did was not to begin to hold on to what went wrong and what didn't go wrong. He looked for a way to reconcile what has been in that country in order to make a way forward. I think what we need to do in this country at this particular point in time is to open up probably a Truth and Reconciliatory Commission where all those who have sinned, all those who have delved, who have delved into corruption can come on that table and make a form of restitution where everybody is accepted and is being moved forward. Because at every point in time, I don't envy the president, I pity for the president. You discover that even when he tries to make some moves against the fight of corruption, right in his cabinet, he observes corruption. Some even say the president is corrupt, and rightly so. Because if you go back to the elections of the president as of 2015, you begin to ask how much was expended in the funding of his campaign. What was expended in the funding of his campaign? Would you now say was scooped from, I think it's 17 or 71 cows in Daura? Not so. It was definitely contributions from people from other places. And when you begin to x-ray the sources of income from these people, there is no way you will not reduce it to corrupt platforms and those kind of things. So if you look at the
proceeds
of corruption, so even the president by himself is not totally free. It's not innocent of the whole thing. So what I think we need is just like what the scriptures in the Bible says, that when Jesus Christ was saying, he who is without sin
should cast the
first stone. So if you take that phrase to the Nigerian space, he who is without corruption should cast the first stone. I bet you, even the president may not be able to cast that first stone. So what we need to do as a people, as a country in Nigeria, is to redesign that kind of truth and reconciliatory commission and see how we can come up with ideas, with conversations that will free up the space for a way forward.
Some people have recommended a corruption amnesty for those who have, stolen the country blind. Just agree that I stole 13 billion naira. And
this is what is remaining.
This is what is left. Okay. I'll be ready to return, and then I will go and sin no more.
I think that is about pretty what I'm trying to say, because let me tell you something.
But not so many Nigerians will agree with that.
No, you don't. Not many Nigerians will need to agree until it starts working, and that is what leadership entails. Leadership does not really mean sitting on the comfort side of the bed. You need to come up with solutions. Sometimes solutions that people are not seeing, but you as the leadership, you'll be able to see it and pull the people through. That's what leadership entails. Like what you have rightly said, that is not a bad idea. Like I rightly said here, even the president may not be free. So we need that kind of commission.
You're actually echoing what a politician said not too long ago that we're talking after the show. And he said, look, you see this corruption fight, we're all tainted. Both the led, the followers.
The leader and the led.
Exactly. That everybody has been affected somewhat. And maybe the best thing to do would be not to keep looking back.
Yeah, exactly.
But to actually look forward and say,
where
from
do we
here
go
on
from
now,
here?
where do we go from here?
Yeah.
This is the standard that we should set for ourselves as a people, as a society,
Yeah.
so that we can actually make progress. I tried to, get a clear definition of what corruption really means. And it says that the abuse of power for gain and destruction.
Okay.
So the abuse of power would be on the side of the leadership.
Okay.
I mean, you wonder if the same applies. That definition would apply to the ordinary Nigerian
who is not in power.
Yeah, who is not in power. But like they say, at some point we're all leaders in our own little pockets. Do we compromise? Do we circumvent the system in a way that it will, benefit us at the expense of the other?
Well, definitely, like you rightly said, is the abuse of power. So if you want me to expatiate more on that, even nepotism is part of corruption. Tribalism is part of corruption. Sectionalism is part of corruption. And let me tell you something. At every point in time, we look at the bigger picture of corruption, but we don't look at those incentives, those things that aid and abet and breed corruption in this country. You have a whole lot of things: poverty, hunger, everything. You have civil servants not being taken care of properly. For example,
being paid their salaries.
Yeah, not being paid their salaries. For example, you pay somebody about, let's say, the 18,000 naira minimum wage. Is a school teacher. Let me use Abuja for example. Probably it's a school teacher around somewhere in Maitama, and he lives in Kubwa. There's no source of accommodation around his school in Maitama, around in that kind of area, and you expect the school teacher to use about that is 18,000 or 30,000 naira to be diligent from where he is working
from
down
Kubwa to
you don't do that. So even the developed countries that are fighting corruption, before they fight corruption, you see, corruption has a way of taking care of itself if you take care of some of the basics, you understand? You have people, like, take the police force, for example. You have a police force that is not insured. You have a police force whose vehicles are not good. You have a police force sometimes have to buy their uniforms.
Yeah, many times.
Hazards and no allowances, and you push the police to the road, and you expect that police force to operate optimally like that you see in the US or in the UK. It's not just possible, even in heaven.
All right, we'll come back to you. It's not possible even in heaven. All right, let's bring in now David Ugolo. He is the Executive Director, Africa Network for Environment and Economic Justice. He's joining us from Benin City in Edo State. David, good morning. It's good to have you join us right now. Now, on the discourse of corruption, you have been on this case for many years. I know you have you have the strong voice against corruption over the years. But if we have to narrow it down, it seems every Nigerian always point fingers to the leadership, point fingers to heads, point fingers to those in either in Asorok or government houses, as the case may be. But if we bring it down to the average Nigerian, do you think there's something basically wrong with a Nigerian when it comes to corruption? David, are you there? Good morning.
Yeah, I'm there. Yes. First, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity again.
Thank you.
I'm actually just watching in televisions and then seeing how things are going. Looking into the behavioral approach in tackling corruption. That, for me, is something that is very innovative, considering the fact that where we are coming from. And this new approach provides an enabling environment to see how we can deal with this problem in a different way. And I completely agree with you that we are at a point now that we must avoid finger pointing. Whether this finger pointing won't solve the problem. To solve the problem of corruption, we need a collective action. It's an inclusive campaign and recognizing the fact that we are all victims of corruption. And I try to explain it in a very basic way. If you go to the hospital, you don't have drugs, you don't see a doctor, that's part of corruption. You apply the road and the road pothole, an accident happened, you lost your family, that's part of corruption. Mm-hmm. We are all victims of corruption, one way or the other. And as a matter of fact, corruption is worse than Ebola. But if you look the way Ebola scourge was solved in Nigeria, you can see that there was a collective action, irrespective of the political party you belong to, or which part of the state you come from, or part of the country you come from, or whatever any religion. You saw the kind of collective action that happened in Nigeria when Ebola happened. That's what is required today to change the corruption trend in the country. Now, there are some norms, there are social norms that continue to sustain corrupt practices in Nigeria. For example, if somebody is incumbent in the government and his people will always have this kind of talk, it's our turn. You know, this our turn thing is a kind of norm that has now been accepted in the way that if you are given an appointment, you must do things to favor your own people, which is a form of corruption when the people are not due for it. So this new approach that we are looking into is to avoid finger pointing and see how we identify some of these social norms that help sustain corrupt practices across the country. And once we identify them, we begin to see how we can begin to build collective action against it, because the implication and what it costs us is huge. And that's why I said that this is not the time of finger pointing. And when you put it in context, Buhari, as the president of Nigeria today, have put on the front burner the issue of corruption. And that, for me, is something that we must commend. And in solving the corruption problem in Nigeria, you see that it's beyond Buhari. It requires the support of the National Assembly. It requires the support of religious leaders. It requires the support of all strata of the society. And that's why some of us in the civil society, with the support of the UK aid, we are able to now assemble a team. And as we're speaking now from Asaba, we have invited over 80 different people, from the religious leaders, the churches, civil society, media people. What are we trying to look? We're looking a new innovative way that corruption fighting is not just government business alone. It's our business. Just like TVC is also contributing their own quota in raising public awareness in this new approach. For us, this is something that is innovative. This is something we must give priority to and allow our government to provide leadership. And that's the issue of political leadership.
All right.
Political will of the government.
David,
that we can take forward.
David Ugolo, let me stay with you. This innovation that you're talking about, should it include catching them young? Like, you know, like this. I mean, growing up, we remember that we used to be taught, you know, where the rights of the other person starts or stops is where yours begins or ends. You know, remember whose child you are. And I recall the jingles on radio those days. Your life is the mirror through which your children look at life. And all of that. Is that really where we should begin to look at the issue of corruption? And maybe even fighting corruption from a patriotic point of view. David?
Yes, it's part of it. As a matter of fact, yes, it's part of it. That's why I said it's an inclusive fight. It's an inclusive thing that includes children, because when you catch them young, you make them, it's about value. What kind of value? You look at children today in the university or in the secondary school, how do they perform in their exam? Why do they cheat in the exam hall? And when they finish the school, why would they rely on their parents to introduce them to get an admission? All those are ethical things that we need to look into, because a child that cheats all throughout our school time will certainly not be able to compete. It will not favor competition. So it is good to catch them young, to learn the habit of abhorring things that are not ethically right. And so the youth is also inclusive aspect of this new approach in catching them young. As they're reaching out to the religious leader, the values that our people give priority to is something that we also need to tackle. Then even our traditional rulers, I give you an example in Edo State. You know, the issue of human trafficking is an element of corruption as well. People traffic human beings to make money.
Yeah.
That is dubious. But you can see that since the Oba of Benin decided to place priority on the issue, I can tell you that human trafficking in Benin has reduced dramatically. Another aspect of corruption in Nigeria is land speculation. You can also see the role of the Oba of Benin. So you can see that the traditional rulers do have a role in tackling this corruption, because in the first place, who are the participants in this corruption work? We are all involved. And so this is not the time to point finger. It's for the time to be inclusive in the campaign.
Yeah.
Whether you are a member of PDP or you are a member of APC, it doesn't really matter, because corruption has no face.
All right. That point definitely has been
All
well
right.
taken.
David, we'll come to you. Alfred, he mentioned something about value earlier on. If we bring it down to an everyday life, a young man, young Nigerian man, sometimes is very eager, very in a hurry to make money. In a hurry not just to make money, but to live well. Sometimes not just even to live well, but to make a statement. They graduate from school, they want to make 1 million in the next 1 year, get the best of jobs, you know, marry the most beautiful wife, build the biggest house, drive the biggest car, and all of that. Now, all that mix puts him under pressure. Sometimes also when he compares himself with the next person, or even not knowing how the person got money or got that or not, as the case may be. Is there something very drastically wrong with the value system as to how young people are coming up, the way they're growing up?
Yeah, something is drastically wrong with the value system of young people, especially the premium that has been placed on money, and not a value-driven life. By that I mean, like you rightly put here, young people want to wake up next tomorrow, make 1 million, make the next 10 million. If you want to do that by creating solutions to life's problems, like the Mark Zuckerbergs and being innovative, and there's nothing wrong about that. When you wake up without a job plan, without a discipline to work hard and make 1 naira at a time, and you just want to grow, it's a big problem in our society, and the society judges you with all of that. But you can't also take away part of the blame. You can't take away part of the blame from the institution. You understand? The truth is, the country we have come to live in, the country we have come to inherit, has also reduced the population to the big, because reduce people to that line of thinking.
Okay.
For example, now in Europe, you don't need to have all the money to go to school. You have basic education. Just if you can prove that you are up to tax with respect to education, there's a bit of funding for you to get to education and get job. Yeah. Even when you don't have job, there are council properties that you can stay in. Even when as a young person,
yes.
take
Studio
for
apartments,
good
and
student apartment, all of those things are there. We don't have all of that. Now look at our pensioners. One of the gory sights you can see on TV is when pensioners begin to queue for their pensions. It's even more pathetic when you see pensioners such as soldiers, people who have really fought in different wars to keep this
Nigeria
country
united.
together. And some of them wait for their pensions, waiting on the streets, and like they are beggars, you understand? The country reduces them to nothing. So it's not totally the problem of the people, it's also a problem of the institution. And like I will always say, you see, the corruption is a big pot of many things, you understand? Everybody's looking at the corruption. There are a whole lot of things we can take care of, and corruption will be sorted automatically.
If you had social security,
yeah,
for
if we had
example,
social security, if we had a good form of education,
Yeah.
you understand? And let me also say this. Fighting corruption should not just end at the talk without the walk. You understand? As a government, we need to begin to provide these basic amenities. We need to think creatively. And you see, that is the advantage that comes with President Buhari's age. At his age,
he has nothing to lose.
not like he has nothing to lose. He has the age that permits him to speak healing and bring everybody together in the nation, and not this combative approach. Don't forget that it is this combative, a part of this combative approach that drove our economy down. Like, people are to scamper with their monies out of this country because you don't know who will be blackmailed for what and for who, and who will be linked to what. And you know, the state has so much power to do all of that. So at his age and at his time, if it was a monarch or in other countries where this kind of, don't forget, Mandela was about his age when he was president of South Africa. At this age, what he is supposed to do, or what his advisors are supposed to advise him to do, is to speak healing, bring a reconciliation, get a new beginning for the country, and not this combative, if you are not for me, I throw you away, breaking the rule of law as the system is suggesting currently. So these are the many problems, and that is even more of a problem to this country than the so-called corruption. And like you rightly said, if there is a way the country can come up with a system where those who were corrupt in the past can say, okay, we're all saying it. Because you see, no matter how hard you try as a government, you may never find out even up to 20% of those who have stolen corruptly and hidden the money. Look at how many billions of dollars have been stolen from Nigeria since 1973.
Because, I mean,
how much has been recovered?
One could even say that the system seems to have permitted corruption in high places. And
of course. In this country, we have three exchange rates for the dollar at a particular time. One for pilgrimage, one for
different,
and all those kind of
There was a time they even had up to 11.
Yes, and you know, there's a whole lot of institutional corruption.
Yes, indeed. And that institutional aspect is what I would like David Ugolo to address. Yes, let's even look at the institutionalization of corruption. Corruption in high places. And of course, the general perception, let's even look at the rating, you know, from Transparency International, where Nigeria really has not done well, 140 out of 180 countries. Is there a difference between perception and reality? Is Nigeria as corrupt as it is perceived to be? Or is it truly very corrupt? And then if we determine exactly how bad it is, how can we move forward, especially at the institutional level?
Well, first, I want to say that, yes, perception is different from reality. But you see, it's difficult to measure corruption. So scientists, researchers who are working on corruption issues across the world look for a way at least to have a kind of a measurement that will show that the level of corruption. And so Corruption Perception Index, which is one of the first clear, innovative measurements that have been developed in the world, was something that was used to at least categorize different countries where they are when it comes to corruption issues. So for me, it also indicates clearly where we are in terms of our institution. If you look today, country where the Corruption Perception Index is very poor, their governance index is also poor. There's a correlation between CPI and governance index produced by the World Bank. And what it means is that the level of governance is very poor. Institutions that will help tackle corruption and remedy the situation in the country is undermined by corruption. For example, the procurement system in the country. You know that the grand corruption that is happening in the country happens around the procurement system. And once the procurement system is not transparent, what now happens? You can't ever have a system that is clean. And that's why it is good to put system in place, put institutions in place. So in tackling corruption in a country like Nigeria, the first thing you have to do is to recognize the fact that the institutions that will help avoid corruption will be put in place. And one of the key institutions are procurement systems. Now, you can also put those institutions in place, but if you don't have leadership that have the political will to make those institutions to function, nothing will happen. That's what has happened in Nigeria in the last 10 years. We do have a procurement law in the country. We have the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative in place. We have other key institutions in the country. But why is it that we still have widespread corruption in the country? That tells you that there's a leadership challenge. Just recently, the petroleum industry bill, governance bill, was passed on to the president for signing. What has happened? Nobody at the leadership level wants to leave the control of the oil well in the country, because that's an exclusive right for leadership. And it's not just about APC alone, it's the same thing with PDP. So the political elite in the country see oil as their source of rent collection. And unfortunately, oil will come to an end one day.
Of
and
course.
uncertainty will begin to look beyond this and begin to put institutions in place that will help the country to think beyond oil. We are all in trouble. And that's why we think that the corruption problem is something we must all fight headlong. And in fighting it, we must look for an approach where it is not about PDP, it's not about APC, it's about the country. And until we have that collective action, there will be no way forward. And the first thing we are doing is raising an awareness about our collective role, our own responsibility at
All right,
the individual
David.
level, at the community level, and even at the media level.
All right.
Because this whole thing is inclusive.
Okay. Thank you very much, David Ugola. You have put it bare there. Everyone has a role to play here. David Ugola is the Executive Director, Africa Network for Environmental and Economic Justice, joining us from Delta State. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, coming up on the program.